Hello, my name is Tolg, and I exist, therefore I think too much. I am going to read Fred's work, Beyond Good and Evil. Boop-a-doo-ba-doo. I'm on chapter 2, points 34 and probably 35. Maybe 36, depending on if, 35 is really short. 35 is really short. Also, depending on how many rants I go on. In that respect, in that vein, on that note, I rant. And I also cuss, which is also why I'm taking it 2 points at a time. If you don't like cussing, don't watch this video. Practice your free will. Which is actually, it's what I'm reading about in Marguerite Porret's work, but it is not what I'm reading about in this. The first chapter was The Prejudices of Philosophers, at which point Nietzsche goes over his prejudices against other philosophers. He really did not like his peers for their superfluous ideation, or rather their ideation to utilizing superfluous words, and their lack of respect for being a philosopher due to a need of self-preservation. And then Free Spirit chapter 2 goes over whether, as I've understood it, which I am a limited human, and I maybe did 2 years of college, but certainly that was not inclusive of philosophy. My favorite class was sociology and anthropology, and then English lit after that. And therein, that's probably why I critique it the way that I do. So having, criticized my own person, I will move forward and say that I'm pretty sure all he's been saying in chapter 2 is that he feels threatened. Not that he says it so much as indicates that the field of psychology, he was born in 1840, so I assume the works that he was primarily making, writing would have been 1860 to 1890. And I do know that the field of psychology maybe wasn't introduced. I don't know when it started, but it would have been fashionable once it picked up a bit of pace. And it sounds in some of his points that he feels threatened by a new pseudoscience. I don't know if philosophy is considered a pseudoscience because it's kind of a general study, but psychology is, I think, still considered a pseudoscience. And for 1860 to 1890, psychology was not doing well. We've come a long way. So if you're judging psychology based on how Fred understood it for his time, I think that's limited. You're giving it bare minimum ground, and I think that's unfair. Having said that, 1860 to 1890, they had fucked up practices. Ghosts in your blood type shit. So, I have ranted about that. You're welcome. Now, point 34. At whatever standpoint of philosophy one may place oneself nowadays, seen from every position, the erroneousness of the world in which we think we live, is the surest and most certain thing our eyes can light upon. Okay, so I have a rant right from the start. Sorry. There was a comment that I had been addressing just prior to making these, which was on one of the journal entry posts I made, and I don't necessarily advise anybody watch those, but I'll leave them up anyways. And in it, I admit to my own piss poor psychology, really. And the individual commenting asked, how do I know it's reality? What is real type thing? In this, he says, The erroneousness of the world in which we think we live is the surest and most certain thing our eyes can light upon. Erroneous. I would have to understand the exact definition of erroneous, but misleading is what I contextually understand of it. And the misleading ideation or tendencies of the world is the only thing that we can be assured of. Is fascinating. Because, yeah, the conclusion in the answer I gave the person who left the comment was, I don't care. It's the same thing they teach you in AA. The prayer that they teach you is, give me the strength to change what I have the ability to change, and give me the acceptance, I think, or give me the peace to accept the things that I cannot change. Something along those lines. And it's just knowing that if you have the ability to affect something, affect it positively. And if you cannot affect something, don't concern yourself with it, because you will probably blow yourself out of proportion. You confuse yourself, spend a lot of energy in the wrong direction, and not have anything to show for it. You may actually end up fucking other people over, because in your attempt to change something, you've changed something else you weren't attempting to, because that was in your capacity to affect, not this. And your aim to change this without being able to means that which is in your capacity to affect does have an effect, but an indirect one. So really, the only thing you can do is aim to control yourself. You cannot control others, but you can control yourself. So aim to have yourself under control, both subconscious and conscious actions, and hope, by observing what is the most objective reality one can obtain, that you are doing your best by yourself and those around you. Make that a goal. To which they commented back, what is the purpose of life? And I think that's when I gave the comment of, all I understand is to learn. In any experience I have ever had, the end result was just a need to learn more, a want, a desire, a drive to learn more. And I think personally, it could very well just be personal. And I don't mean to mess up someone else's life by insisting that what works for me personally is going to be generally applicable. But I don't think you can do harm by learning more. I think that would be the most sane and reasonable thing to do in any situation, is to learn all that you can. And sure, there's going to be a bunch of information in there that's useless. Like, I know that a pumpkin is not a fruit. At least I think I know that. And there's like difference between something, a squash and a pumpkin. Okay, I thought I knew it. Maybe I don't know it. However, there are things you will learn that are totally pointless, but it's still exciting to know new information. And maybe one day I'll relearn that and use it somehow. All of this to say, personally, I think that if you're not learning, I don't know that you're living. If you've stunted yourself by the inability to process information and use deductive reasoning, I think you're just stuck surviving. I don't think you're living at all. So again, if you were to ask me what the purpose is, it's to learn. And where he says where we think we live is really interesting to me, because then he goes on to say, surest most certain thing our eyes can light upon. I know that before he became a philosopher, Nietzsche was a philologist, and I did not look up what a philologist was, so I will edit that in. But one of the things, kind of on the same note, that another hyperfixation of mine, other than oscillation, is that we as humans, as a human species, generally, I don't know, there could be a rare person out there that sees more, but generally we only see like 0.005% of the light spectrum or something absurd like that, which leaves, or 0.05%. It's absurd. So it leaves like 99.95% of the light spectrum that we do not perceive. And that's how light travels through material objects, because nothing in reality is actually solid. All the molecules are held together by an energetic force, or a magnetic, however that works. And light therein passes through things. And so if we're not able to perceive 99.95% of light, that means that we don't see things for what they actually are. The table in front of me may actually have like 7 different colors to it, and I would never know. Pigeons, cool birds, really, but they have like these really neat writings and identifiers, like thumbprints to each pigeon, which can only be identified to us through a black light. And it shows up like cool greens and pinks and stuff. Really neat birds. But yeah, there's like a whole crap ton about reality that we base on our perception, and our perception is just inherently faulty. There's this metaphor, little story doodad, and it's that a tribal leader, maybe not a tribal leader, but a member of a certain indigenous tribe would go out to read the waves. That was like their job, or part of their job. And in reading the waves, they would probably study air currents or the flow of things and be able to go back to the tribe and report back what they saw and give hopefully warnings about it. Like, the waves are going in a direction we don't expect them to go, so expect a storm type of thing, I assume. And one day they go to the shore to do their job, and they see the waves parting in a very peculiar way. They can't identify why, but in studying the waves, they know that this is so bizarrely abnormal. So they go back to the tribe and they tell everybody, this is really abnormal, doesn't feel safe. At this point of the story, I have no idea what happens, but I think, if memory serves me right, they, go into hiding or nomadically travel somewhere else more safe, something. And the other side of the story is that there is a ship at sea, and it finds an island and it docks, and it gets down and it finds signs of life, but it doesn't find people. And the two worlds intersect therein. This tribe, not having seen a ship before, wasn't able to perceive it, wasn't able to make sense of it. But what they could make sense of was the effect this thing had on its surroundings, the surroundings they were very much used to seeing. And I'm, again, not really sure how real this story is. I heard it in church, and that's what they would use to justify not being able to perceive God. But in saying all of this, it's stuck with me that, human perception is faulty, but it is mainly what we base our understanding of reality on. And therein, our understanding of reality is totally faulty. We stand to be corrected. But I think as humans, especially being driven by fear, we're afraid of being corrected. And I say this in most of my videos, but currently everybody is suffering from this inherent struggle for tribalism, needing to belong somewhere, because historically, animalistically, that is what survival was based on, is where you belonged, how well you belonged. And if our reality proves surreal, it is going to increase this ideation of tribalism. But in an age of incredible technological gains, this tribalism is more a psychological need, or maybe even a want. Because sure, we need the ability to socialize, and we need the comforts of other people, but I don't know that humanity needs to segregate in order to keep safe with the technological advances that we do have. Resources do not need to dwindle to the extent that we feel it is actually happening. So, if reality is going to prove itself surreal, I think it would be safer as humans, and going all the way back to what's the point of life, to learn. I think it would be safer as humans, as the animal species that we are, to survive together and adapt, to understand that we are not the end-all be-all of truth, that our perception can stand to change, and it's okay. And that's where, deductive reasoning comes in, and having ethics and a general sense of morality is, okay, this may not be what I understand, let me run it by what I believe to be the most objective version of logic. And is it okay therein? Is this necessary or unnecessary? Bringing that all the way back to good and evil. There you have it. That was one sentence in and a rant from it. To do. I meant to say ta-da. Oops. Okay. Sorry. Our eyes can light upon the most surest and certain thing. We don't know, essentially, anything other than the misleading tendencies of the world. Change is the only constant. We find proof after proof thereof, which would fain allure us into surmises concerning a deceptive principle in the nature of things. He, however, who makes thinking itself, and consequently the spirit, responsible for the falseness of the world, an honorable exit. Whoa. Which every conscious or unconscious advocatus Dei, I don't know what that stands for in Latin, avails himself of. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to break that down because I followed and I didn't follow. He, however, who makes thinking itself and consequently the spirit, maybe the soul, responsible for the falseness of the world. Thinking itself responsible for the falseness of the world. I mean, I could be so off on this, but it sounds kind of like Nietzsche's pondering metaphysics, where it's getting into multiple dimension, pocket dimension theory type things. I would love to pick his brain. If time travel were a thing, which it might be, but I don't know, would I fuck shit up just to be able to talk to him? Maybe. Okay, but then it gets into saying an honorable exit. Responsible for the falseness of the world, an honorable exit, which every conscious or unconscious advocatus Dei avails himself of. Avails, no need for something. Alleviates. Unconscious, conscious or unconscious, does not need an honorable exit. And an honorable exit would be understanding that perception is false. He who regards this world, including space, time, form, and movement, as falsely deduced, would have at least good reason in the end to become distrustful also of thinking. So where's the honorable exit? Is the honorable exit then, acknowledging that perception can be false And that would bring the individual honor. The exit part is weird. Where the opposite of believing that your perception is all that reality is made of is dishonorable, I think. But then he goes on and he says, world including space, time, form, and movement. So our perception of reality being falsely understood, would have at least good reason in the end to become distrustful also of thinking. Okay, I was about to say that perception is thinking, but I think thinking is born from what you perceive. Like you perceive, then you process that, and then you produce thought construed of what was observed. The thought is the deduction. In that, thinking is a tool meant to help you understand what it is you've perceived. Wouldn't that be what is beyond good and evil? Because it's not, like, it's a necessary tool to help you understand what's going on. And therein, lying. I don't know so much that it would be lying more than it could be wrong. Is that what it says, lying? Distrustful also of thinking. Oh, okay. I just heard distrust and thought lying. My bad. Word association. Freud. So, trusting your thoughts. Do you put trust into a tool meant to help you understand something? More than your trust should just be in yourself and your ability to perceive. And your distrust should be in yourself then. Like a healthy amount of both. Your thoughts are just meant to help you work that out. Again, I don't think your thoughts are something worth trusting or distrusting. It's just to be used and to be understood. Has it not hitherto been playing upon us the worst of scurvy tricks? Scurvy. Lyme disease? Not Lyme disease. Scurvy lacking vitamin C. I'm confused again. Am I overthinking this now? I think I am. Okay, hitherto been playing upon us the worst of scurvy tricks. Thinking has been fucking us up? What? Oh man. Backed into a corner can do nothing right. And what guarantee would it give that it would not continue to do what it has always been doing? Our thoughts? Our thoughts thinking? Our thoughts should stop thinking? Maybe he just wanted peace. In all seriousness, were we not being serious? My bad. The innocence of thinkers. Whoa. Again with hating modern day. Okay, so everyone, I don't know if everyone, it's a common question to ask people, like, if you wanted a superpower, which superpower would you have? And I've never really landed on anything, but I know what superpower I would not want to have. And that's the ability to read people's thoughts. Because I have known for a long time, there are some people's heads that I do not want to be in, ever. Ever. Never. Some people don't have innocence of thought. Some thinkers are not innocent. In all seriousness, the innocence of thinkers has something touching and inspiring is what that word is. Whoopsie daisy. Respect inspiring in it. He's so sweet. That's so forgiving. I like that. Good for him. which even nowadays permits them to wait upon consciousness with the request that it will give them honest answers. Oh, wow. Is that right? People trust that their thoughts are truth? Like, the truth? The only truth? That's not right. Thoughts are your tool to help you understand reality. What? What? Weird. Trusting that the thoughts produced in your head are just objective truth. Oh my. Wow. One's gotta hope, third party too, that what they're thinking about is good in nature then. Oof. Oof, oof, oof. Ah. For example, whether it be real or not, and why it keeps the outer world so resolutely at a distance. What is it? Thinking? And other questions of the same description. Why it keeps the outer world so resolutely at a distance. Permits them to wait upon consciousness. Consciousness keeps the outer world at a distance? I don't know. If you can leave a comment telling me what that is. Consciousness will give them honest answers. So yeah, it's consciousness. Consciousness being real or not, that's also metaphysical. And I do think it was brought up in prior points where he touches on things that modern day peoples contemplate a lot and really get stuck on. That NPC ideation of people finding out that our reality is binary coding, built on binary coding, and that being the thought process behind, well, this is all just a computer game created by someone else. So it's still real. You can still touch, you can still affect things. Just because you're affecting things in a small bubble, a small part of reality, doesn't mean you don't have an effect. It's still important what you do. It still matters. You still matter. Whether it's binary coding or not, it still is an expression and a means to understand yourself and others, and I think that's incredibly important. Although, why it keeps the outer world so resolutely at a distance? Why does consciousness keeps the outer world at a distance? That's very insular. Maybe it's a safety mechanism. The belief in immediate certainties is a moral naivete, which does honor to us philosophers. I mean, the I Ching, the Book of Change, was around for Nietzsche's time. Wonder if he ever came across it, where it gives something like, I just read about it, but something like 246 possible answers, and then you go through a series of like laying out bamboo sheaths or something. I mean, there are multiple ways to do it, bones and whatnot, but you throw them down and then you go through a process of like picking certain ones that threw wrong or look wrong or something like that. And then you do that like 10 different times to get the answer you're immediate or trying to go for, the direction at the very least. And even then it gives a kind of, it's a pointed but vague response so that it's still applicable. Certainties, I don't know. I wonder if he did. It was Victorian period. Yeah, I looked that up last time. It was Victorian period, and the Victorian period was fraught with people delving into psychic ideations. I have a collection of, maybe this is too much, I don't know. I have a collection of bicycle cards because, well, I like playing solitaire, but I also found it interesting that bicycle cards were created when tarot was generally banned, and so they have a structure for each face card, each number card, where certain games you play 5-card draw or whatever, I don't remember, the answers have a set of, like, sometimes it'll be 3 answers per card, and the psychic then is like, well, this is what this means for you. But yeah, that's essentially why bicycle cards were created, was a means of playing tarot in public and having it not be damned by other people. Nietzsche was studying philosophy during a time that psychic tendencies were heavily sought after and played into, like seances and that stuff. So immediate certainties makes me think that that's maybe what he's talking about, is people believing that they can perceive the future rather than maybe, metaphysically understanding that it's one of fucking infinite possibilities, just depending on... Oh God, there was a book I read, and it was so good for this, but it was definitely Christian, and I'm not debasing it on the premise that it was Christian, but I am saying that it's been so many years, so I don't know how to look it up, but it did believe that, as most of the Christian community, non-denominational specifically, does believe that God gives you gifts specific to the individual and pertaining to what the individual needs in life, and among those gifts is the ability to perceive of the future. So in this book, that's what was happening. And it explained, I think, butterfly effect, where he was trying to get him and a woman out of a certain situation, running away from people that wanted to take her back to the country that she was initially from. And he found that if he rolled the ball out the door 3 seconds into the situation, it would cause a series of effects to happen. Versus if he didn't roll the ball and he bounced it, it would cause a different set of actions to happen. And so in there being infinite possibilities to anything happening, there were a set of possibilities that were most likely and least likely among those to happen, and to go with the one that's most likely to get him the option that will come about. And I do believe that if you are to be able to perceive of the future, that would probably be the most reasonable way to do that. Or for the system to do that. I don't know why I went on that rant. Sorry. Oh, immediate certainties. Even in perceiving the future, you wouldn't be able to perceive an immediate certainty. Nothing is certain. But a moral naivety. Moral. How could that be moral, more than it's just general naivety? I do not know, which does honor to us philosophers. But we have now to cease being merely moral men. Whoa, goodness, have we? Apart from morality, such belief is a folly which does little honor to us. Okay, you're just insulting it, but you're not giving a reason as to why you believe that. Honor to philosophies, little honor to us, so little honor to humans. Does he not count himself as a philosopher? Before he counts himself as a human, so his job is not an ego hit. That's probably why he's one of the more honest. I like him. If in middle-class life, an ever-ready distrust is regarded as the sign of a bad character. Oh, is it? I don't even trust myself. Man, I must have the worst character. Well, shucky darn. And consequently, as an imprudence, here among us, beyond the middle-class world and its yeas and nays, what should prevent our being imprudent and saying the philosopher has at length a right to bad character? Anybody has a right to being a bad person. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. You have the ability to do it. Doesn't mean you should. Doesn't even mean that it makes sense more than half the fucking time. Yes, also bad character would probably need to be defined more than just saying you don't trust people. Because that's a general application, and 1860 to 1890, being considered a bad character then could definitely differentiate from a bad character in 2026. The Victorian period was fraught with sexual identity, especially in the middle class and upper class. Yeah, sure, married couples, but it wasn't like this strictly adhered to thing. And so modern conservatism, sleeping around is terribly horrible, and you obviously shouldn't do it. Victorian period, middle class, upper class, it's how you treated your friends some of the time, given the fucking works of literature that have been written. So, what is a bad character for 1860 to 1890 versus a bad character now? Probably needs to be said in detail. As the being, right, philosophers have a right to being a bad character, presumably, or maybe they could have a right to it. Whatever ends up being a bad character. As the being who has hitherto been most befooled on earth, most foolish, maybe not. He is now under obligation to distrustfulness to the wickedest squinting out of every abyss of suspicion. So, Rant, there is this queen, and she is very famous. Very, 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 very famous. And especially for the current modern day US. Often referenced. And it's another thing that I have a huge pet peeve about. I only reference that she's a queen because I currently forgot her name. It's Marie Antoinette. Ha! So she was raised in a house, and like most women of the time, raised to be a wife in the future. Like most nobility, promised at a young age. So set up to be a specific type of wife. The hope is that the royal connection remains. And so raised to be queen. So everything you're taught is that you are property and you will be property. And in being property, you have to represent the person that owns you well. So what you're taught is manners, how to eat right, how to dress right, how to gossip. Because throughout women's history, gossip controlled. So, for the time that Marie Antoinette suffered, there were things like tea parties. And that is where you controlled society. You can control a man by controlling his wife, by controlling how society treats her. Long track into politics for a woman of the time. So these tea parties also happened to coincide with another phenomenon of the time, which was fashion. And fashion was brutal for women, where these bonings in the, what do they call that? Corsets, were like literal bone. And in one case in history, did actually stop a bullet. But they would dig into your sides, and then you had this crinoline and all these skirts that hung on these bones, and it would cause bruising. And then these corsets are also like fucking pulled, you know, and so you are running out of breath, literally fainting spells. They had smelling salts for a fucking reason. So these little tiny get-together tea party snack eating things wasn't cute. It wasn't like a tea party. It wasn't, yay, we're fancy. It was, I'm dying and my body is being abused and I need to sit down, but I need to make it look good because I need to represent the person that owns me well. And spending the owner's money made them look good. As long as everyone knew they had money. Along with being the king's wife. That also means that you are not married for love. You are married to breed. And so the king, had relationships other than her. And she had relationships other than him. And you find that in wealthy marriages. If it's not spoken on, it's fine. If it's not found out, it's fine. Just don't bring the honor, the reputation down with what you're doing. All of this to say, it is my theory that let them eat cake was her way of being spiteful towards a husband that bred her for like 10 children, raped some of them out of her, dragged a woman below her station who was not raised to be queen, had her sit at the table, and say, spend his money. These cake parties were a necessity to show the wealth of the king. Let them eat cake would have been her way of retorting, spend the king's money. That's my theory. And when it's like the most befooled on earth, as queen, you also had to take into consideration that you will be the immediate fall guy. You are the first sacrificed because you are not as important as the king. Rant. Not necessarily relevant, but there you go. Forgive me the joke of this gloomy grimace in turn of expression, for I myself have long ago learned to think and estimate differently with regard to deceiving and being deceived. And I keep at least a couple of pokes in the ribs ready for the blind rage with which philosophers struggle against being deceived. Isn't a philosopher's job to find out what is real? So, like, their struggle against being deceived is their job what they're paid for? Why would that then cause consternation? Get a different job if it's making you upset. Especially to the point of blind rage. Like, stress kills. They did a study and... Oh, there's a word and it starts with A and I'm totally not going to think about it. But stress causes a type of chemical release that then causes a serious illness. Yeah, maybe I'll edit it in later. I don't know. But stress kills. And it's not like a cute way of saying that. It literally kills. So if your job is causing you blind rage and you're working to stay alive, are you living or are you surviving? Trade schools are important. Invest in local education and trade schools. Philosophers are struggling against being deceived. Why not? Okay. It is nothing more than a moral prejudice that truth is worth more than semblance. What is true and what is untrue is not what is moral and what is not moral. Isn't it that morals don't have anything to do with what is real? I am confused. It is, in fact, the worst proved supposition in the world. I don't know what's happening. So much must be conceded. There could have been no life at all except upon the basis of perspective estimates and semblances. And if, with the virtuous enthusiasm and stupidity of many philosophers, one wished to do away altogether with the seeming world, why would they do that? Philosophy, again, is the want to study the world and reality. Why would you want to do away with it? Why do something if you hate it? Well, granted that you could do that, at least nothing of your truth would thereby remain. Well, if you got rid of the world, then yeah. Indeed, what is it that forces us in general to the supposition that there is an essential opposition of true and false? Black hole? The opposite to both what is true and false is what doesn't exist. Is it not enough to suppose degrees of seemingness? Mostly true and mostly false? That there are variations? That still, even with variations, it still puts it in one of the other, true or false. Although mostly true is the one that's interesting there. Because mostly false would still be false. Somewhat false is still false, but mostly true is just... there's false in there. Does it make it false? I think to me what is negative has more value because I've been most affected by what is negative. Not that objectively its value is better or more. Oh, I just discovered something about myself. Probably that I already knew. But I rediscovered it. Is it not enough to suppose degrees of seemingness and as it were lighter and darker shades and tones of semblance? You know, if you replace it with rather true and false, what is unnecessary and necessary, then that's exactly what I said prior, that there are different degrees of what is necessary, most necessary, least necessary, to what is most unnecessary and what is least unnecessary. And I think that makes a hell of a lot more sense than what is most true and what is least true, you know, on and on. Different valeurs, as the painters say. Why might not the world which concerns us be a fiction? It might be. But you still exist in it, so you may as well. And to anyone who suggested but to a fiction belongs an originator, and if you find the originator, do something by the originator. If you never find the originator, do the best you can by yourself. But always attempt to learn more. What's the point of thinking whether or not it exists versus attempting to understand if it exists? Two different things entirely. And one, you're just spinning yourself in circles. Does it not exist? Rather than pursuing one or the other. Actually, rather than pursuing one or the other, you should probably just pursue the subject and learn whether it exists or doesn't exist simultaneously. Because you can exist in a vacuum of information and then you'll never learn anything. With lack of what's the word? Not friction, but it may as well be. Contrast, to help you understand. I say this all the time too, you know. You're just as blind in too much dark as you are in too much light. You need both to have proper understanding. Might it not be bluntly replied, why? It could be. I mean, that's your job to ask why. May not this belong also belong to the fiction? And if it does, then it still exists. Whether that existence in entirety doesn't exist or not. It still exists in the understanding that you perceive it does. So you should address it as it does. And do what you can. And if you can't do it, don't do it. And if you shouldn't do it, don't do it. It is not at length permitted to be a little ironical. Can't you just say ironic? Towards the subject, just as towards the predicate and the object. Why did you just break down the sentence structure? Okay, so belongs would be the predicate, originator, object of the predicate, subject, fiction. I think I'm thinking in multiple dimension theory, at which point if infinity exists, then yeah, there's going to be a creator of something that doesn't exist, as that's just a possibility in what is infinite, so I'm not bothered. Change what you can change, accept what you can't, and move on. Might not the philosopher elevate himself above faith in grammar? Grammar, the ability to relate yourself to others? I don't know how you would rise above perception, utilizing your ability to relate to other people. Oh, no, faith. Elevate yourself above faith in the ability to relate yourself to others. There's no elevation there. It's just the ability to relate yourself to others. Faith either exists or doesn't exist in that situation, but the ability to relate yourself to others is an ability. Where faith is, I think, something you own and act on. Right? All respect to governesses, nannies? But is it not time that philosophy should renounce governess faith? Well, I'm gonna have to look up what governess faith is, because faith in nannies? I don't know. Alright, I ranted a lot, so I'm just gonna read point 35 and not 36. So point 45. Oops. 35. Oh, Voltaire. I have him, but I haven't read him yet. Oh, humanity. Oh, idiocy. Is this to say that he does not like Voltaire? You know, I've heard that opinion. I think Voltaire is not necessarily a well-liked person, based on general media and how they display people reacting to Voltaire. There is something ticklish in quote-unquote the truth, and in the search for the truth. And if man goes about it too humanely, well, this is another language. Il ne cherche le vrai que pour faire le bien. I am so sorry. I wager he finds nothing. Ooh, sketchy argument. Ooh, sketchy argument. Man, he's lucky he lived in 1860 to 1890. 1840 to 1890. I don't know when he died. Ooh, sketchy. Yeah, science was advanced by torturing humanity. Should it have been? When prior Middle Eastern cultures advanced their understanding of reality by utilizing spiritualism, they did not need to torture humans to get their answers. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Alright, that was fun. Have fun. I'm a little shaken, I think. Okay. I'm gonna go contemplate things. I hope you do too. Drink well, sleep well, eat well, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.